trauma among Indigenous communities. Twice nominated for the Pushcart Prize, Melissa writes poetry with a focus on social justice, culture, tradition, and spirituality. Melissa is a 2015 recipient of the Evergreen State College Longhouse Native Creative Development Grant. Melissa Bennett.
Tatskaloit inamlotuas in Nimiputant, the Nez Perce language. That means good evening, my friends. Ketsi Yaya, my thanks to you for allowing me to be here tonight and to read a couple poems to you. These two poems that I'm going to read to you are about Indigenous women, about Native women. I'm Umatilla, Nez Perce, Sakin Fox, and so these are for my grandmothers. Ghost stories from the sweat. She was a ghost, my grandmother, this woman I never met, but I'd heard the stories. Grandpa had been the hero, the one who picked up the pieces when she abandoned her children in an alcoholic stupor. My birth mother was 4, my auntie 8. And sometimes the legacy of ghosts is louder than any memory. I would sweat every other week on land that had too long been reserved for the so-called criminally insane, and I would name 7 generations of Native women, my women, the women housed in my bones, in my blood, in my body: Melissa, Karen, Marianne, Esther, Sarah, Wese Susami, Tiakshbum. Inside that dark, inside that womb, lying belly down on the ground and praying hard for our histories, they came with their stories, and Grandma's was the loudest. She had been here before in the state hospital of Crazy. 50 years ago, housed and drugged in this place 3 months once, 2 months a second time. Doing her laundry, taking her pills, cooperating quietly like a good woman should. 10 milligrams of Meloril, 25 milligrams of Meloril, 75 milligrams of Meloril, antipsychotic drugs for a woman with no trace of psychosis. I had heard the tales of husbands dropping off their wives, committing them to locked wards, Medline psyche valves, men who decided their women were beyond their control, were unfit mothers, were dangerous examples who couldn't be left alone in the house with a gun, dumped, left, forgotten, labeled insane. My grandfather put her there. Who was the hero now? On the ground, in the sweat, face in the dirt, heart on the earth, cedar steam rising, her story showed up in the hiss of the pour, the red glow of rocks, the thick, black dark, and she told me. He threatened to drive me there, and he did. He made me believe it was my fault, that I did this, that I deserved it. He made me believe I couldn't be trusted with the children. 7 pregnancies, 6 kids, 1 dead, 2 in foster care, 4 with relatives. Yes, I drank. At the parties he took me to, at the bartender job I was forced to take after he declared bankruptcy. Once, I stayed with a friend for 4 days, and that was what did it. Not the time I threatened suicide with a kitchen knife. Not all the times I cried myself to sleep. Not the numbness I felt when our oldest baby choked on her own vomit and died. It was me leaving him alone with the kids that drove him to drive me to the mental asylum. The steam rises up, thick in this heat, and the shadows of my grandmother's past hold tight. I see it. I see how it could have been me. I see how our stories align, how depression has always followed me, how alcohol is a self-medicating habit, how sometimes I long for a place to hide. But I have no children, and I walked away from an abusive husband 10 years ago, and I do not live at this hospital. I work here, praying hard every day with the ones locked inside. And there is something in my prayers. There is something in the saying of our names. There is something in the medicine of this heat, of this cedar, of this pouring of water and expulsion of sweat that frees us up. It frees every woman in this lodge. It frees every person in this hospital. It frees every ghost who once lived here. It frees me. It frees my grandmother. It frees 7 generations of women, past and future. We are not theirs anymore. We are our own. We belong only to ourselves. Thank you. How many of you know the story of Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie? Yeah. You know that tiger lily? That's a problem. So, I wrote this little poem for J.M. Barrie. It's my love letter to him. It's called Neverland. J.M. Barrie, you can keep your tiger lily. This figment of your imagination is what you think Indian women ought to be. Savage, redskin, fodder for men. At the mercy of lost boys and pirates, your pickaninny princess bears a knife between her teeth, teaching white men what native women are not. Being drowned and rescued by colonizers, a play toy for their amusement. No thank you, I reject you. Your story has already taken too many of our women. I kick your version out. Keep your tiger lily. She is not me or my sisters. She is not me or my aunties. She is not me or my mothers. She is not me or my daughters. She is not me or my grandmas. She is not me or my lovers. I reject your tiger lily and give you instead real Indian women who have better things to do than play with lost boys and pirates. We have better things to do than be defined by white men, especially white men with pens. Your character is flat, one-dimensional, barely human. Our women are complex, dynamic, fierce, and resilient. We are busy being mothers, sisters, aunties, grandmas. We are busy being friends, confidants, counselors, and clergy. We are busy advocating and empowering, creating and transforming. We are writing our own stories, dancing our own dances, singing our own songs, making our own magic. We are too busy healing our people and ourselves to keep your definition at the center. You, J.M. Barrie, with your hook and Peter Pan, can stay in Neverland. Thanks to you. Thank you very much. And now I have the pleasure of introducing to you Xochitl Julissa Bermejo. Xochitl is a 2016-2017 Steinbeck Fellow and former Poets and Writers California Writers Exchange winner. She has work published in Acentos Review, Calyx, Crazy Horse, and the James Franco Review. Co-founder of Women Who Submit, her debut poetry collection, Built with Safe Spaces, is forthcoming from Sundress Publications. Please welcome Xochitl.
Hey Joe, do you have a program with you? No, it's okay, cool.
So I had a hard time picking something to read tonight, and I went with something a little that had some laughter in it, so I hope you enjoy. This is from a longer essay called The Water's Dead Number. Jacques-a-tail? Is Jacques-a-tail here? It was my first day at T-ball, and I was standing in a green field with an oversized glove sitting on the wrong hand. Jacques-a-tail. The tall, shaggy-haired dad called out again, and I remember thinking, that name is weird. Who has that name? X-O-C-H. I jumped up. Oh, that's me, I said, accepting the name Jacques-a-tail. At 5 and in my first year of school, this was only the beginning of many years of new teachers, coaches, and classmates. By the time I was in junior high, I took to stopping a teacher at the front of the class as soon as I saw her slim face contort. I'm right here, I'd say. I'm so cheap. And the teacher would exhale and appreciative of my save. Over the years, I got accustomed to introducing myself as Xochitl, like, that's so cheesy, in hopes of overstepping awkward pronunciations such as exochitl, exochitl, and jacques-a-tail. But even with the overly simplistic pronunciation, I still got the annoying so-she and the absolutely intolerable zo-she, and I said so-chi because if I introduced myself as Xochitl, well-meaning people tended to say so chill or that's so chill, like you're so chill. And that was more than I could handle. At 16, I met a cute boy with shiny blonde hair that draped over shaved sides and tasseled just above his prep school uniform collar. He was a year ahead of me in school and a lead singer in a garage band. with other boys from his class. As soon as he met me, he fell in love with my name. I like to pretend he fell in love with me, but honestly, it was just my name. We were standing under the walkway awning next to the library during a short break. The sun was shining on us and our reflection showed in the library's wall of glass windows. "This is Sochi," his bandmate introduced us. "Sochi?" the blonde boy said excitedly. "Sochi? Like you have the chi? That is so chi." His religion teacher earlier in the day had told his class a story about how he had learned to harness his chi, and that in harnessing his chi, he was able to stop himself from killing a man with his bare hands, or something like that. The boy loved my name so much that he wrote a song about it with his bandmates. The legend goes that he always wanted to write a song with the title, "If My Amp Had Wheels," and after he met me, he was inspired to write it. The chorus went, "Sochi, Sochi, I'm so glad you're Sochi," and I loved it. Who wouldn't want to be the inspiration for a song, or be the bearer of the name that was the inspiration for a song? I loved it so much that I bought their $3 demo tape and played it over and over. I played it for anyone who would listen. One afternoon, I played it for my cousins on my mom's stereo. It was one of those multi-layered robot-like stereo systems with a turntable at the top and levers for treble and bass blinking through its midsection. I slapped in the tape and pressed and punched the play. The song scratchily released from the two speaker towers. I started dancing around the living room and singing along. If my amp had wheels, I would go real fast. And if my amp had speakers, then we'd really have a blast. Have a blast, yeah! My cousin sat on the couch, unimpressed. "Don't worry, it's coming," I said. "You'll see," I assured them. The chorus hit, and they instantly started laughing. "What's so funny?" I asked. "Don't you like it?" "No," my cousin Monique said. "It's weird." "Weird? What do you mean? Who is Sochi?" She over-accentuated the O like a California surfer, like Keanu Reeves exclaiming, "Oh, shit." "That's me," I said. "The song's about me." "That's not your name," Monique said. I was confused. "Your name is Sochi. Soch. These white boys are saying your name all wrong." Never had I noticed that my family pronounced my name differently than I did. But she was right. My entire family called me Sochil or Sochi, and never did they use the full California slang O or the chi like that's so cheesy. It was something softer. And I spent the last 10 years so fiercely battling the exochills and the jocatails that I couldn't hear the choir spaces of my own name. When I was little, I hated my name, and I wished it was Heather, like feather. Like 80s feathered hair, something light and easy, and nothing like the kinks and knots of Sochi. But when I was 22, I traveled to Mexico City with my mom to see Pope John Paul II canonize Juan Diego. After the ceremony, she rushed me to a cab and instructed the cab driver to take us 45 minutes out of the city to Xochimilco, even though we had been up since 4 a.m. Once there, we climbed into one of the many rainbow gondolas crowned with oversized names like Teresita and Gabriela. I was drifted along the flower waterways and caught my name etched into the side of a teal wooden canoe. At Teotihuacan, I stood at the base of a stone pyramid and found red and green painted flowers. The sign next to it read, Sochi, flower. In the Museo Nacional de Antropología, I encountered Xochitl carved at the top of a behemoth stone Aztec calendar, the 20th day. I began to realize that Sochi wasn't so strange. Sochi was history. Sochi was stone. Sochi was blooming. Thank you. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Juan Luis Guzman. He has earned an MFA from CSU Fresno and holds fellowships from Macondo Writers Workshop and Canto Mundo. A poet and professor, his work has appeared in several journals, including Azarakis, Pank, and Wisache. He is the artistic director at the Selma Art Center and teaches at Fresno City College. Here is Juan Luis. Juan Luis.
Thank you, Sochi. To our body, At the camp for migrant children, our summer school teacher writes, "Danger es peligro," to tell why we must never step into a body of water unattended. Pearls at her throat, she teaches us Fresno heat, maddening enough to drive you toward the stillness of a pond you would never expect to sink and dive into. A boy from our class springs into a canal and knows power, feels the swallow and gargle of currents carrying the final wailing of arms, a surrender. We know what makes him jump, edges off muddy ditch banks, days when heat summons. We find relief from the 1,000 burning needles coming down hard against our bodies. After a leap, there is water, the rush of Savior's breath on sweating skin. This next poem takes its title from a poem by Bob Hickok, and the title is, "It's Hard to Help the Dead Be Dead Before They Are." A sparrow, perched upon high voltage wire, looks at me as if to say, "What do you know of equilibrium?" I am at the center of this. The dead lizard, petrified on my father's street, reeks of lineage. Everything keeps falling dead around me. I am already looking for my parents in things as if they were gone. The honeybee is my mother, and the hummingbird is my father. I see them gather for water and say to the bird, "Father, is that you?" To the bee, "Mother, have you remembered?" I want to know what the hummingbird waited for all spring. An empty nest, jade, ruby, and wings in view of my window, showing me what it is to be still in midair in my breast. And why does the honeybee linger in circles around my ear, whispering ancestors? People say don't drink the water, and the water begins to fill pools as dark as my father's brows, which are my brows, which is inheritance. What you get at the end when the waiting is over, knowing what the dead know and watching the living wonder on about it. It is half of everything. An unfinished warning. The closer you get to water, but you're already 1 foot into the mouth of a great body moving. Thank you. I want to thank you, my collaboration, Lorianne, the faculty, all of you guys for being here tonight. I especially want to thank my primo Aldo and his beautiful wife, Leslie, for being here. I haven't seen them in 10 years, but they've worked out this time so I'm going to finish with this final poem, Onions. Have you ever plucked onions from pockets of rich and loosened Kings County soil? Used your fingers to reach in and cup bulbs from underneath themselves? One season, my father leased his land to grow Fresno's sweet red onions. I spend weekends with my mother learning how to draw out the plant without hurting the value of each globe. Mornings and afternoons, we pick them. We take shears. We clip stems, green and hardy. We place on burlap to dry before we pack and ship them away. At night, I take off my clothes for the swimming pool, hiding my body each time I emerge from the dark water, pulling out my naked self the way I yank onions all day. Bare and so new, the sting of them still on my skin and in the sweet red air. Our next reader is Guadalupe. He teaches Mexican American Studies in the Puente Project at Lee College. He supports various pro-migrant, pro-ethnic studies, and pro-social justice efforts in Houston, and holds an MFA in creative writing from Cornell, while dabbling in cultural studies, anthropology, and multimedia installation and documentary. Please welcome Guadalupe.
So thank you. I haven't read in about a year and a half, so this is kind of cute. I wanted to start off just by acknowledging what some of the members of the Macondo today's my daughter's first year birthday. So this is her back there. Oh, there she is. So she is my inspiration. She's brought me to and her name is Catalina Huitzillara. Yeah. And I was so moved by the conversations we had in Macondo about legacy, about history, and also now what she wrote about her name, which is now what, and also heard about hummingbirds. So I wanted to tell a little bit of a story about why we named her Huitzil. Also because oral storytelling to me is also one of my forms. But I never, whenever someone asks me what do you write, I never say it, but I consider it one of my forms. So Huitzil is Nahuatl for colibri, for hummingbird, which a lot of you probably know. It also is the root word for Huitzilopochtli, the will to act. And so being an activist family, we joke now, we say we're a Chicano crunchy granola. Obviously activism is important to us, but there's another element to it, and on that special day when we were kind of making a final decision about the name, I talked with my partner, Deyalira, and told her I wanted to name her Huitzil. And I mentioned that name before, but I kind of revealed to her another reason that I wanted to name her Huitzil, and that goes a little deeper into my history. And it's a story that I've written about and motivates a lot of what I write. But when I was an undergraduate, I actually had an experience with a partner of mine. We went through an abortion. And it was very traumatic. There was a lot of regret and guilt. It took me a long time to kind of process that. But a few months later, towards the end of the year when it happened, we found a hummingbird in the parking lot. And we, being young, we decided we would try to keep it alive and see how far, what we could do to keep it alive. Initially, the intention was that we would keep it alive and call animal control and then like turn it over, but that quickly kind of became, let's just see if we could keep it alive. I think it worked for about 2 or 3 days. It didn't make it. But there was a little bit of a burial. It was a little bit of a grieving moment for us. But for me, I think having the opportunity to have a child and actually being ready for it, I had a feeling of wanting to kind of touch on that history a little bit. So when I talked to my partner, I said, "Are you okay with this? I don't know if you'd be okay with it." And she told me, "Well, it seems to me like it's about embracing your past so you can move into your future." And I said, "Yes, you get me." You don't think I'm weird. And so that's why I love you so much, and that's why we were. And I eventually I will tell her that story as well, and I hope she will have the resilience to put up with whatever nicknames I give her because of that. But I think it's worth it. We have to honor our history, even if people make fun of us for it. I want to read a little bit from a chapter called Carapea, from a story that I think I've always denied that it's actually kind of like a big family epic, and I'm really scared of that, but I think that's what it is. It also deals with fatherhood, experiences of fatherhood, failed fatherhood, troubled fatherhood, and it's about a son and a mother. The mother has just finally achieved kicking out her husband of the house, and she's sort of like getting rid of his lingering presence. And so it's kind of tough for the son. The real problem came when we got to the rooster. Eduardo felt sorry for the thing. It reminded him of his dad. He wouldn't catch it, but the sun was going down, so I said, "We have to finish this miracle. He can't stay around." Eduardo looked at the dead chickens soaking in the tub, 2 chickens and 4 pollos. Their bloody feathers were everywhere, smelly and wet. Baby feathers were stuck to the trunk like mushrooms. Then he looked at the rooster enjaulado. I don't want to kill him, Mama, he said. We have to, mijo. Besides, he'll just end up dying alone anyway. I know, it's just like my dad. Cállate con eso, niño. This has nothing to do with your dad. I handed him the gloves. Pick him up and take him out to the tree trunk, I said. Eduardo walked in the cage. The rooster stood there raising the feathers on his neck and snapping his head. Eduardo glanced back, worried and scared. Anda sin miedo, I said, just grab him by the neck. He squatted down and lunged, but kicked at the rooster instead. El gallo snapped back and flapped his wings. Finally, Eduardo lunged and grabbed him by the neck. He lifted him up and held him way out so the rooster's claws couldn't reach him. Grab him by the feet, I said, don't strangle him. It looked like the rooster snapped at him a few times, but Eduardo finally managed to calm him down. He took him over to the tree trunk and put him down. I stretched out his neck on the tronco, laid it flat. The rooster gave up fighting, then it just opened his beak like he was trying to breathe. The first machetazo didn't work, so I had to try again. That's when Eddie started to shake. Eduardo, ¿qué traes? I said. Nada, he said, grunting, it's just getting cold. No, it's not. Your hands are trembling. I'm fine, I said. Dale. ¿Estás seguro? I said. Stop shaking or I'll hit your hand. Okay, he said. His eyes blinked and he tightened his hands. The rooster blinked too, just then. A red eyelid flashed across his face. I raised the machete and brought it down with all my strength. The rooster squawked, but it sounded like Eduardo, the way he shrieks when he thinks something is really scary or funny. He was trying to act like he was wiping sweat from his face, but I could tell he was wiping tears from his eyes with his shirt. After the blood finished draining, we put him in the tub with the rest of the boys. It was almost like you could see steam coming out of the water. Eduardo wanted to stay outside for a while. I said I needed help carrying the tub back to the house, but he said, please, I'll stay out here just for a while. So I let him. When I turned back, though, I saw him go into the goat pen and stand up on the big steel bench. His father had put that there for the chivos to play. I walked back to the house and watched him from the kitchen for a while. He was standing on the bench, but I couldn't see him very well anymore. It was getting late. I wanted to tell him to come back inside. I would make him a caldo de pollo. Everything would be okay. But I decided to wait. I knew he was trying to remember his father in a positive way. Okay, thank you. So I do want to introduce Victoria Valenzuela. Victoria Valenzuela is a writer living on the west side of San Antonio, where she is an activist, educator, and mother to 6 children with poet Vincent Cooper. She holds a BA from SUNY Oswego and writes creative nonfiction, poetry, and essays. Her most recent publication can be found in I Only Wanted One Time to See You Laughing, a Prince tribute anthology. And she has always been a Prince fan and will never recover from the loss of him.
In honor of a purple life. I heard you clearly, the ringing of your call reverberated in the center of me forever. If you knew me or heard me cry, you would know it's in harmony to your sound. You echo my heart with perfection. You point to the camera that is my eye and explain everything. How do you say? I wonder you. on my mind. I will never get over the loss of Prince. I know to some people that sounds very silly, but it is because of his music, his creativity, and his badassness, his royal badassness, that I am the Victoria I am today. I'm a mother, I'm an activist, I'm a badass, I'm the fire in the fire, I'm the light. I'm all of these things, and I'm here for you to help evolve humanity with the mother that I am. In solidarity with the mothers that are living undocumented in America, that have been violated by ICE, by Carnes and Dilley facilities and beyond. I've been writing about undocumented mothers for a while. This poem actually comes from, I want to say 2006. And it's about a specific woman named Alma Minerva Born. It is unpublished. Alma Minerva Chacon did not hold her newborn daughter. Alma instead gripped the shackles that chained her to a dirty bed in Tent City, Warzona. Begging as her child emerged, Alma did not spread her knees, for the shackles kept her in place as she gave birth to the daughter nearly stolen by Americans. Alma was given ice for 70 weeks. I nursed my newborn the instant he was born. I was strapped to a table, arms and breasts spread apart like wings. I touched my fingers to their thumbs in San Antonio, Texas. I can breathe, my heart beating fire. I was safely cut open. My son spun inside my womb before he was pulled free from me. The children will grow up here, never knowing about Alma and I, though we were only states apart. In birth, we are bound. This poem was written when I still lived in Oswego, New York, which is, if anybody cares, 40 miles north of Syracuse, in the middle of nowhere. I was telling some people earlier that it gets so cold there, Al Roker shows up. This poem was written between 2007 and 2010. And I believe I was very concerned about the Afghan war in those days. This poem is called Wake Up or Good Night. Oh, earth, you impede me so. The space of time holds me firmly in place. I cannot defy the spin of your axis. Believe me, I've tried. I've tried to breathe synchronicity with the rise and fall of children sleeping. It is my silhouette that covers them, more warming than the Afghan, woven together like cultures or threads. The arm of my boy encircles the ribs of my girl. He protects her as they dream. I dream of an earth held as tenderly safe, warm under a mother-made Afghan. I lift my chin for a breath. I say, wake up or good night. Thank you. These are I'm working on a series right now, but the title of it is called In Bed, a Postpartum Romance. I recently gave birth to 2 children by way of C-section, which was a whole different kind of warriorship for me. And these are just 2 poems from that collection, which they go together. This one is called Swell Times. In bed, I let it be, even if I do not make breakfast tacos. Whole wheat tortillas are a no-no. The ghosts of our grandmothers heaving with laughter remind that joy is ours to carry on. The C-section stitches tighten. I've already passed the floor with him, kissed him, given milk, held my chest to his chest, patted his tiny diaper. He spins in his quilt as if still in the womb. Slow, solid steps mean I smell blood, the salt of me. I was built to feed a nation. This C-section scar itches like a motherfucker. A 2-faced snake lurking between my pubis and the fat of me. The children were born from an opening in my gut, pulled against their will to stay warm and fed and coiled inside me. The baby sucks at my tits for milk. We lie still in the dark until the daylight hours. Soft curves nestle together. Masa swells in the bowl under a dish towel. Dear Vincent, we lost the umbilicus today, July 14, 2015, at 10:15 a.m. It was the last tether from the before world to me. Vincent Jr. is now in the world. I won't ever give birth again. This means I will spin forever in the world, and then comes the afterworld. My contribution to the world is complete. Forever in love, Victoria. Thank you. Lupe Mendez, everyone.
Buenas tardes. Let's give all the poets another round of applause. Is everybody enjoy their evening? Damn good. Buenas tardes. My name is Lupe Mendez. I am blessed to be able to introduce tonight's featured reader. I consider this individual to be a mentor, a brother, a kindred spirit. I will follow Sarah Garcia's lead and give you the anecdotal note before the profound official introduction. This is my home. Once my wife and I had the luxury of getting to fix a meal and break bread, and my mother is calling me right now, so I'm doing this. And break bread with him, our current Texas Poet Laureate, while they were both in the Houston area. The most recent National Association of Chicana and Chicano Studies, NACS de Jasper. While we ate and laughed, we talked over the conclusion of my MFA experience, one in which he played a pivotal role. This man sat on my reading committee and served as one of the best support systems in getting the work done and the anthropoesia work I do today. At dinner that night, I mentioned how thankful I was to him and jokingly mentioned that my diploma from the University of Texas from El Paso had not come in the mail yet. Quick as a flash, this writer/artist got up, walked over to our house library, and asked for a sheet of paper and a pen. With quick wit and precision, my once profe created a makeshift diploma. I lost my place. In which he drew pickaxes, because miners is our mascot, and wrote that I was being conferred with the degree of an MFA, and that, quote, I was a bomb-ass writer, end quote. He even got our Texas Poet Laureate, Lorianne Guerrero, to sign the bottom of it as a witness. Currently, along with my official diploma, both of these sheets of paper hang on my wall. This is the kind of writer, the kind of person he is, one who acts with good heart, one who supports the writers and the writing community around him with grace and humility. He writes of the history and the story of Nuestra Gente, serving as an artist who lights up the past so that it is not erased. He fans the flames of creativity in his students and teaches them that discovery and research, along with noticing what they notice, provides for serendipitous gifts. This, then, is his introduction. Tim Z. Hernandez is an award-winning writer, research scholar, and performance artist whose work has been featured in the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, the San Francisco Chronicle, CNN, Public Radio International, and National Public Radio. In 2006, his debut collection of poetry, Skin Tax, from Heyday Books, received the American Book Award and the James Duval Fill-In Award from the San Francisco Foundation. His first novel, Breathing in Dust, Texas Tech University Press, was awarded the 2010 Premio Aztlán Prize in Fiction from the National Hispanic Cultural Center. And in 2011, the Poetry Society of America named him one of the 16 new American poets. In 2013, he released his third collection of poetry, Natural Takeover of Small Things, University of Arizona Press, which went on to receive the 2014 Colorado Book Award in Poetry. Also, in 2013, he released his historical fiction novel, Mañana Means Heaven, from the University of Arizona Press, which is based on the life of B. Franco, the real woman behind author Jack Kerouac's Mexican Girl. In his book, On the Road, based on Hernandez's relentless search to locate the mysterious B. Franco, the book is grounded in one-on-one interviews the author conducted with her before she died at the age of 92. Mañana Means Heaven garnered rave reviews from the international critics and went on to receive the 2014 International Latino Book Award. In 2014, he was also a finalist of the inaugural Split This Rock Foundation Freedom Plow Award for his work on locating the victims of the 1948 plane wreck at Los Gatos, the incident made famous by Woody Guthrie's song of the same name. The result of this 6-year-long investigative work is the basis for his highly anticipated forthcoming book, All They Will Call You, from University of Arizona Press, and the accompanying documentary, Searching for the Plane Wreck at Los Gatos Canyon. As a performer, Hernandez has collaborated with experimental theater troupes, Grammy Award-winning composers, hip-hop, reggae, and Latin rock artists from universities and cultural institutions to black box theaters in New York City, to the Gentry Center in Los Angeles, to the migrant labor camps of Central California. In 2001, he was commissioned by the United Way of Greater Los Angeles to write and perform an original play on homelessness, and since 2007, he has worked with Poets and Writers, Inc. and the California Center for the Book, offering writing workshops to rural communities across the West Coast. Hernandez holds a BA in Writing and Literature from Europa University and an MFA from Bennington College of Vermont. He is currently an assistant professor at the University of Texas at Paso's bilingual MFA program in creative writing. Ladies and gentlemen, all ready. Give a warm, badass round of applause for Tim Z. Hernandez.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate being invited here, and also thank you to Greg Barrios, who was originally part of the Macondo lineup this year, and for a number of reasons, at least reasons I don't know, he had to sort of step aside and they invited me. So I'm really appreciative for being here. I really am. Thank you to the committee, and also thank you to the wonderful. Let's have a round of applause to the wonderful Sarah and Katie, and of course. Lorianne and the people who Macondo together this year, and just for having us here in your home in San Antonio. And I have to give big props to also my homies Juan Luis and my homie Joseph Rios also, because they're from Fresno. They came out here. Alex Espinosa was here too. So all my Fresno clan, it's really an honor. And so thank you all. It's just an honor to be here. I'm going to start by, I'm going to actually share a little story before I get into the story of the story. Around 2001, my grandfather, Felix Hernandez Sr., who was born and raised in Brownsville, Texas, he was a migrant campesino there in the San Joaquin Valley, where I'm from, Fresno County. Around 2001-ish, he got into a bad accident with his van, kind of accidents you hear very often, where he was taking a van load, a cargo van load of campesinos out to work early one morning, and the van hit, sort of tumbled into this embankment irrigation, and he broke his back. And no one died, fortunately, but people were actually deported after that accident, people who were injured that he had with them. And anyway, it prompted me to think quite a bit back then, and this was again in 2001. And I wrote a poem for him, and the poem, it had questions, actually. It was a question that I was asking. This is crazy how synchronicity works, right? And the poem said, who dies in the back of a narrow van, lips splayed to the heavens, who survives, who arrives first, who will harvest those bodies and who recalls them in a dream? How does one return to belongings when names fade? Where do they go? Okay, that was in 2001. The poem went on and on. Well, here I am now in 2010. And I was doing some research for Mañana Means Heaven, and I was typing into the search engine. 9 years after that poem, after that incident with my grandfather, I was typing into the search engine there at the Fresno Public Library, and I was actually looking through the microfilm and all that, and I started to look for labor camps, Selma, California, 1947 and 48, because I was trying to locate, actually, for my book Mañana Means Heaven, I was trying to locate the actual labor camp where B. Franco and Jack Kerouac were together and where they would have been working in Fresno County. And as I was typing this into the search engine, this newspaper article came up, and it said 100 inmates see an airplane fall out of the sky, ship plunges to earth, farm labor accident, worst airplane crash in California's history. And it happened in Fresno County. And I went, oh shit, this looks like a great story. And so I started to read the article, and at that same time, because I was working on this Mañana Means Heaven book in the 1940s and the campesinos that were there in the Central Valley in the 1940s, I was actually listening to quite a bit of Woody Guthrie's music because he wrote quite a bit about it in the 30s and 20s, and I wanted to kind of get into this, at least era, this mood. So he was on one side of the sort of intersection, he was on one side of the radar, Woody Guthrie's music. On the other hand, I'm receiving this information about this plane crash. And as I started to read the article, by the time I got to the end of the article, I realized this was the same incident that he wrote his famous song called Playing Rick at Los Gatos Deportees. So that's where my journey began. I wondered what happened to the people, the passengers. So the story goes, on January 28, 1948, in Oakland, California, a immigration charter Douglas DC-3 airplane, which was sort of the workhorse of World War II, a DC airplane that was outfitted to take passengers, was deporting reportedly 28 Mexicanos who were here working. But I settled some of them, others were just here working. And it was deporting them from Oakland. It was leaving Oakland, California. The airplane was leaving Oakland, California, flying to El Centro in the San Diego and Tijuana border, and it was going to deport the passengers there. But what happened is, as the plane left Oakland and it started to pivot eastward over the central San Joaquin Valley, it started to cross over this range called the Diablo Mountain Range. And as it crossed over the Diablo Mountain Range, smoke started to come out of one of the engines, which was actually, later on I learned, was not too uncommon for that airplane. That airplane it often flew on one engine. That's how good that airplane was. But smoke came out of the left, and pretty soon, before they knew it, the wing fell off, and the ship spiraled and plunged into a place called Los Gatos Canyon in the mountains above Coalinga, California, which is all cotton country there, West Fresno area. So the plane plunged, killed everybody aboard. All, quote-unquote, 28 passengers that were reported to be on the Mexicanos were reported to be on the airplane. But it also killed the 4 crew members, pilot, co-pilot, stewardess, and immigration officer. Killed them also. And then, of course, the 28 passengers killed everybody. The Associated Press and the United Press International at the time picked up the story, and they ran the story, and the headlines, referred to the Mexicano passengers as deportees. But the article said, it mentioned the name of the crew. The article said, pilot Frank Atkinson and co-pilot Marion Ewing and Frank Atkinson's wife, Bobby Lillian Atkinson, was the stewardess aboard the airplane, and immigration officer Frank Chafin, who had so many years with immigration. He was from Berkeley, and his family's from Berkeley, and 28 deportees. Okay. And that was the story spread everywhere, 28 deportees. So, clear out over on the East Coast, our homie Woody Guthrie, who was living he was living there on Mermaid Avenue in New York, he heard that over the radio. Now, Woody Guthrie, I don't know how many of you are familiar with his music, he actually was a big sort of advocate of naming names. He was a poet. He has a song called What Were Their Names? What Were Their Names? Did you have a friend on the great Reuben James? And that was a 20-minute song in which he listed all 88 people who died on this ship, the Reuben James. And all of his friends, Pete Seeger, and all of them would play that song and be like, play the short version, Woody, play the short version. Oh, and he'd say all their names. He'd sit there, all their names, until he was done with the song. And then he also had another song called Sacco and Vanzetti about which happened in Boston. Sacco and Vanzetti, way back when, these two Italian shoe cobblers that were framed, and he didn't like the fact that they were framed. They were framed because they were unionizing. And so he has a song where he says, Sacco and Vanzetti, all I want to do is sing your name. I'll sing your name, Sacco and Vanzetti, all I'll do is sing your name, sing your name, Sacco and Vanzetti. And then he calls the judge out and says, whatever the judge's name, I'm not going to sing your name, I won't sing your name. That's what he does for like 15 minutes. So he was really big on names. So he was outraged at this omission. And so he wrote a poem. He never wrote a song. By then he had Huntington's chorea, and by then the disease was overwhelming his ability to play music. So he couldn't play it, but he wrote the words down as a poem. Okay, and in that poem, what he wrote was he attempted to give them fake names, or fake names basically, to try and restore the dignity of the campesinos who were on the airplane. And so in that poem he writes, goodbye to my Juan, goodbye Rosalita, adios mis amigos Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride that big airplane. All they will call you will be deportee. So I'm going to share with you the book that I've been working on since 2010, since that newspaper article. And it's been a crazy sort of journey of research and traveling everywhere to try and find who the passengers were and their families, and to bring their stories to light. I think I'm going to start at the end. When Luis Miranda Cuevas watched his left leg tear away from his body, more than likely he was unable to comprehend it was his left leg. His mouth agape, gasping for air, while his eyes snapped photos methodically as he tumbled in free fall. Even the sky wasn't real. Maybe it appeared like a still puddle of water or the warm surface of Lake Chapala, where as a child he spent the days fishing beneath the glaring sun. You see, there's a small part of the brain where memory is stored called the hippocampus. In moments of intense trauma, this specific node of brain goes into shock. Any number of memories haphazardly flash as quick as a camera bulb. The stream of blood that poured from Luis's own torn leg could have very well been the bugambilia crawling across Casimira's bedroom window in Jocotepec. The sensation of falling at terminal velocity, where a flailing body can reach up to speeds of 124 miles per hour, may as well have been the sensation of birth. No longer were their souls inside their skin sack. They were between worlds, dead and alive at the same time. Screams for Diosito, if ever they came, had done so from disembodied mouths. The ship rolled once, then twice, shook loose another body. Out spilled young Tomas Marquez, strapped to his seat, intact but aflame, somersaulting across the morning sky. And because of the added weight of the seat, it's likely he reached a terminal velocity of 150 miles per hour, a fireball of lightning. In the explosion, in the spray of molten metal, passengers disintegrated, turned ash. Perhaps one of the brothers, Juan Ruiz, was first, ash. Perhaps next was Officer Chafin, ash. Perhaps the gun on Chafin's hip fired its only round. The accident report said an explosion was heard, yet no evidence of explosion was ever found. Row after row after row after row, those who were strapped to their seats, witnesses to their own end, could only make one final gesture, an attempt to cross oneself, the blink of an eye, flinch. In January of 2015, I got the opportunity to travel to Ocotepec looking for Luis Miranda Cuevas and his family. And originally we were set up to meet a family member at the municipio there in Ocotepec, Jalisco. And that fell through when we got there. We were talking to him over the phone for some time, me and the small research team I have in Mexico. We were talking to him, and he said, yeah, just come by the municipio, I'll be there, I work here, I've been working here forever, so come by, I'll be here. And I'll show you the family, I'll introduce you to the family. He said, wonderful, great. When we arrived there, we walked into the municipio, and they said, oh, he doesn't work here anymore. This was only like a week or two later, you know? I was like, shit. All right. So we were like, what do we do now? All right, what do we do now? So sort of the small team I had of folks were just kind of lingered around, kind of being there and just kind of looked at the pigeons and, you know, ate popcorn and stuff. And then I said, you know, I'm just going to let sort of intuition guide me. I'm just going to walk around the city, and I'm here for a reason. So I started to kind of wander around, just looking at things, wandering. I walked up the street and down the street and wandered around. I found this place, the Casa de Cultura. And I went into it, and there was a library and a librarian. And I just said, what the heck? And I asked her, and she said, oh, I know the family you're looking for. Hang on, let me make a phone call. So we ended up finding the family and sat down with them for a couple of days and interviewed and spoke with them and gathered their stories and all of that. And I said to the family at one point, is there anybody alive? Because these were all sort of hand-me-down stories the family had heard. They were all his nieces and nephews. And so that was their Tío Luis. And I said, is there anyone alive who would have known him? Anyone who knew him personally? No, everybody's young. That was the other generation. And then one of the primos, one of the primos said, oh, Casimira's still alive? No, Casimira, she's still alive? Casimira? Casimira. What a cool name. Casimira. And so I said, man, this can't get any better. Casimira, wonderful. So I said, who's Casimira? And they said, it was his girlfriend. Casimira was the girl he was supposed to marry when he died. And I said, she's still alive? I said, yeah, I think so. Let's go find her. So we got into the van. Everybody piled into this van and they drove us. We got there. We went to the front and sure enough, big old bugambillas all over her front windows and her doors and all that. And we go in, and this woman was in a wheelchair. And she's got a little hat on. She pulls her hat down. And she's there, and it's Casimira. And she says, I have a hard time seeing. This eye isn't good. I know, this is perfect. It was bad eye, Casimira. So I began to interview Casimira. This is one of the stories from the chapter 6, the courtship of Luis and Casimira. Luis and I had planned to be married. Yes, that's true. We spoke about this before, right before he died. From California, he called to tell me that he was returning home and that he was going to bring me a mariachi I will never forget. Casimira rolled her wheelchair back a ways and then called for her granddaughter to bring her more water. The young woman emerged from the bedroom, did as her grandmother asked. Casimira filled with her red shawl. She gazed at me curiously. Her granddaughter handed her the water and she took a long sip. She thanked the girl and continued her train of thought. Every memory I have with Luis is a good memory. There are so many. We got along very well. And, well, we did anything we wanted with him. Well, I did anything I wanted with him. And she laughed. You see, I would make him sew, I would make him cook, things like that. And we got along so well. Yes, we complimented each other. I remember that clearly. When we first began, I would make Luis dress up as a woman and sew with me. Believe it or not, he did this. This is what we did. Well, because, my father would kill him if he saw us together. And my sisters, they would help me. We would all sit side by side in the table, real close, you see, and Luis and I, we would sit in the middle of all the sisters and we would talk. And in order for my father not to see him, well, we'd have to dress him up as a woman. And Luis would do it. He was adventurous, very much so. He was a fun person to be with, and he was willing to dress up like a woman just to get a chance to talk with me, to spend time with me. Casimira's eyes beamed, and that's how we did it. I will never forget this one time. Luis pulled the snug-fitting floral print dress down over his wide chest and tugged it below his thighs. Luisa, his brother Antonio, teased him. Though no self-respecting macho would ever allow himself to be made fun of in such a way, it didn't faze Luis in the least. Any young man in Jocotepec who had seen Casimira's cinematic allure with his own eyes would have done exactly the same. Antonio understood this, but as his older brother, it was his duty to shame Luis to going to such lengths for any female. So Luis took the dark, curly wig and yanked it onto his thick mat of hair. How does it look? He said. Don't laugh. And what if her father catches you? Luis forced his thick hands into a pair of white baby's gloves. He won't catch us. Her sisters will be there too, and they know. They won't be the only ones who know, Antonio said. All of Jocotepec will know, and then, I can't have, what are they going to think about me? So Luis turned to face his brother Antonio. What do you think? Antonio shook his head. You realize you're going to have to walk and kind of move like a woman too, right? And that's going to be impossible with those big ape shoulders of yours. Luis hadn't thought that far ahead. So show me your walk, señorita, Antonio chatted. Luis ignored his brother. You're not going to make it past the front door. Luis knew he was right. He would have to at least incorporate a little hip into each step. Maybe fling his locks every so often. He was in over his head and he knew it. Luis thought about it for a moment. For all the beautiful women of Jocotepec he'd had the pleasure of gawking at, he never once stopped to pay attention to the subtleties that made them all distinctly female. You're as good as dead, his brother told him. And that's exactly how it happened, Casimira said. Luis didn't last but a few minutes before my father caught on and chased us. Luis shoved my sisters aside and he ran to hide. We all ran and hid. One sister, she hid in the baby's crib. Another sister climbed on top of the bed, and I scrambled under my bed. My father, he discovered my first sister, the one who was in the crib, and boy, did he let her have it. Then he found my other sister in the bed, and he let her have it too. And then he looked under the bed, and he found me, and he said, "Get out of there, cara de dolorosa." Whenever my father was upset with me, he would punish me by calling me this, cara de dolorosa. You see, my father called me this because, my father loved me very much. He never hit me. I'll tell you why my father never hit me, because you see, I was named after his mother, Casimira. My mother would yell at my father, "Why don't you hit her? It's her fault. She's the one with the boy." And my father would reply, "I can't hit her because it feels like I'm hitting my own mother." I know Casimira is an ugly name, but it worked for me because I never got hit. But Luis got away with it. Or at least I don't remember him ever being caught. When Casimira spoke, it was clear she wasn't speaking as an 86-year-old matriarch, but instead as a young woman, perhaps no older than 20. There was a youthfulness about her eyes that was revealed in the remembering, and she remembered everything. I'm going to share this last story. Let's get the water. One of the other families that I was able to locate was the family of passenger Jose Sanchez Valdivia. And, did I read this story? Yeah, Jose Sanchez Valdivia. And we traveled to La Estancia, which is near Nochislan, Zacatecas, and we found an old gentleman there hobbling out with 2 canes. This man was rocking 2 canes. And he came out of the meat market with this carne in his hands. He came out and he had this beautiful big hat and he came out. And Celio Sanchez Valdivia, which was Jose's youngest brother, was with us. And Celio said, "Oh, there's Don Guadalupe. That's the one we're going to talk to. He knew my brother personally. He was good friends with him." So we sat down. This story comes from a conversation that we had with Celio and Don Guadalupe. Chapter 15. El Bambino Calls His Shot. 1932 to 1940. As a young man growing up with natural ability for athletics, Jose Valdivia dreamed of playing ball. Whenever the opportunity arose, he would find himself in Nochislan, gathered at El Jardín, listening to an American baseball game on the radio with the old-timers. Long before El Norte had come to represent seasonal work, for Jose it represented baseball. Babe Ruth had already become a mythical figure in his life. On October 1st, 1932, while his father Mateo was out harvesting their meager yield of corn, Jose, only 10 years old, was huddled over a staticky radio, gnawing his nails, listening to Game 3 of the World Series. He was often at El Jardín against his father's wishes. Puras ilusiones, his father warned him. A man cannot eat his illusions. Even at such an early age, Jose could see his father's point, but if not for baseball, what else was there for a kid of his ability to hope for in a place as desolate as La Estancia? Besides, it was the World Series, better known as El Bambino contra los Cubs. Illusions be damned. As fate often has a way of rearing its head when one least expected, it all came down to a single moment. What happened in Game 3 of the World Series that year would prompt Jose to follow his father to los Estados Unidos. It was the 5th inning with the score tied at 4 apiece. And through the small radio speakers, it sounded as if all 50,000 fans were attempting to stomp down Chicago's Wrigley Field. The game had built up such an intensity that fans were now throwing fruits and vegetables at the players. The radio announcer's stick-fire talk kept the old man at El Jardín and young Jose on their toes. "What's this?" the announcer blared. "Babe Ruth is pointing his bat at Charlie Root." The old men glanced at one another. The small speakers trembled. They wiped the sweat from their faces. "Here comes the pitch. Strike!" The roar crescendoed and the radio shook. The men could hardly hear. They hushed one another, and they leaned in shoulder to shoulder now. "All of Wrigley is on their feet," spat the announcer. "Here comes the second pitch. Strike 2!" Again, the fans cheered, and the radio almost now was pure static. Young Jose could hardly stand it. The old man didn't say a word. "Ruth? What's this? Ruth is calling his shot?" howled the announcer. "The Bambino is calling his shot? He is pointing his finger now towards center field fence. El Bambino. The Bambino is calling his shot." For a moment, the men stood frozen. "Arrogance," mumbled the eldest, shaking his head. A second before the final pitch was hurled, there was a silence. "Here's the pitch." The next sound that came through the speakers was perhaps one of Jose Sanchez Valdivia's most favorite sounds in the world. A leather ball being smashed by a wooden bat. El Bambino had smashed the ball and sent it rocketing over the center field fence, just as he promised he would. It was unheard of, a predicted home run. The radio swelled with static, and the men slapped their foreheads and hooted and jabbed at one another. "El Bambino," they said. "El Bambino." Another said, swatting young Jose on the back and messing up his hair. Jose basked in the fervor of the greatest game his ears ever had the privilege of listening to. But it wasn't this event alone. This wasn't the moment that changed the course of Jose's life. No, it was what happened next. The eldest man pulled a blue handkerchief from his back pocket, and he fanned the fly away from his face. He was unimpressed. When he opened his mouth, what he said made young Jose's ears perk up. Luque would have struck El Bambino out. A couple of men nodded in agreement. "Luque?" young Jose asked. The old man snickered. "Adolfo Domingo de Guzman Luque." He said, "Luque," the little man said, eyeing the kid. Jose could only shake his head. He'd never heard the name. El Orgullo de Cuba, the old man piped up. He coughed into his handkerchief. Jose was dumbfounded. Another man proceeded to tell his young friend Jose about a ball player they nicknamed the Pride of Cuba. Los Americanos called him El Dolph, he said. The best pitcher in the game, first with the Braves, later con los Cincinnati Reds. Jose could hardly believe what he was hearing. Why had he never heard of Luque? Was it even possible that by some God-given miracle a brown man had actually made it to the major leagues in Los Estados? This was the moment that changed everything. The years draped themselves over the shoulders of La Estancia languidly. The town was old and it felt old, like the men who shuffled each morning from the carnicero with a walking stick in each hand, hardly able to lift their feet against the pool of Earth's gravity. During these years, Jose, along with his two younger brothers, would tend to the family parcel and care for their mother Dolores, while their father Mateo was lost somewhere out there in Los Estados in the land of the Bambino picking fruit. By the time Jose was a young man with a little more than peach fuzz now adorning his upper lip, his father made a request. Mateo asked his sons to leave La Estancia and join him in a place called Stockton, California, where they would pick and earn 3 times the wages. It didn't take much convincing. Jose only heard the word California, and he was already picturing himself on deck, a bat slung over his shoulder, his hip cocked, as he stared out over a field, not of grapes or plums, but the kind of field that yielded home runs. The plan, as Mateo had arranged it, was that Jose and the second oldest boy, Ramon, would hop on a train in Guadalajara and meet up with him in California. Celio, the youngest of the boys, too young still, would have to stay behind. The boys understood. Jose tried hard to contain his excitement, if only for his mother's sake. Dolores was stoic. She could see the wonderment in the eyes of both her sons. Though they were young men now, she could not help but see them still as children, naive and spirited as the day they had emerged from her womb. She lit candles and prayed for their safety until they reached their father. Perhaps they're still too young, she asked Diosito. God did not answer back. When the day came that Jose and his brother Ramon boarded that train in Guadalajara, Jose was beside himself. He flung his belongings onto the wooden planks of the boxcar and he yanked Ramon aboard with him. The two brothers stood side by side, staring out now across the hot Mexican landscape as the train began, slowly rumbling forward. It gained speed quickly, and in a matter of seconds, Jose had a wall of wind pushing against his face and flapping the tail of his shirt. It was a sensation like none he'd ever known. His arms felt electric as he stood there, feet shoulder width apart, hovering over an imaginary home plate, smiling. A smile lit across his face, and he just couldn't help himself. As the wind forced his eyes shut, Jose, he hoisted an invisible bat over his shoulder as he stood there. His eyes slit open and he gazed out beyond the rolling yellow hills of the Jalisco highlands, and he pictured California somewhere just beyond the horizon. He could see it clearly in his mind's eye. He lifted his left hand into the air and he brazenly pointed his finger in the direction of El Norte. Ramon took one look at his brother's foolishness and he shook his head. Ilusiones, he said, mocking their father. The brothers laughed. Thank you. Let's give it up also for Lorian Guerrero. Thank you, and all the poets and others together for it. Thank you.
Let's get another round of applause for all of our readers. Thank you all for being here. Tomorrow we have, at 3 o'clock, we have the Macondo Young Writers reading happening here tomorrow at 3. And then at 7 o'clock, as I mentioned, for those of you who are not in Macondo, Allison Hedgecote will not be joining us. She is with her family. But we will have 6 Macondistas reading, and we will also have an open mic. So join us tomorrow, and we'll see you then. Have a good evening.